My ex-best friend of 2+ years told me he loved me after I told him I didn't and accused me of saying, "I love you" through subtext, sent me a playlist of heartbreak, called me a liar, compared me to his toxic father's exes, and now I have to face him at a party. When I first met Carpenter, he was that quiet guy who always seemed to hover on the edge of things, friendly but never quite in the middle of the crowd. I thought he looked chill, the kind of person who'd fit right in with my group if he just had someone to bring him in. So one day, I did. I introduced him to my friends, and from that moment on, everything changed. We clicked faster than I expected. He became someone I could talk to about anything. Over time, he felt almost like a brother, someone safe, steady, and close in a way that surprised me. We stayed friends for over 2 years. But this past April, everything fell apart. It wasn't one big explosion at first, it was a slow build, like pressure collecting behind a wall until it cracks. Looking back, maybe it started when I noticed him acting different. He'd go quiet sometimes, distant, or just off. And, because I value communication, I asked him about it. At the time, I didn't know it was because he had feelings for me. The first real problem between us came from his habit of freezing up. We'd plan hangouts, sometimes with friends, sometimes just the two of us. And then he'd disappear. Hours later, I'd get a message saying he forgot. When I pushed to understand, he admitted that he'd get overwhelmed and just shut down until the moment passed. I didn't really get it, but I tried to be patient. I told him it wasn't healthy and that while I cared, it still hurt to be stood up like that. I thought if I approached it calmly and kindly, we could work through it. Besides that, there was another thing that always bothered me. The people he chose to hang around. There was one guy in particular who constantly made me feel small, talking over me, telling me to shut up in the middle of conversations, acting like everything I said was stupid. Carpenter knew it made me uncomfortable, but his excuse was always, "Well, I'm friends with him." And every time I'd have to sit there, biting my tongue, while my supposed friend said nothing. Still, I trusted Carpenter. I thought he cared enough to understand how that felt. Through all of this, I made one thing painfully clear. I wasn't looking for a relationship. From the very start, I said things like, "I'm not ready for that right now," or "I just can't handle that kind of thing." I'll admit, maybe it sounded like I was leaving the door open, but I also said, over and over, that I didn't want anyone waiting around for me. I even told him about another guy I'd fallen out with because he was waiting for me, and how uncomfortable that made me. I thought that would make my stance obvious. About a year into our friendship, I started to suspect Carpenter liked me. He never said it outright, but I could tell from the way he looked at me sometimes, or how quiet he got when I talked about liking someone else. So one day, I asked him directly. It turned into this long, emotional conversation, and by the end of it, he admitted he did have feelings for me. I told him as gently as I could that I didn't see him that way. It wasn't about him being a bad person, it was just that I didn't want that kind of relationship. We both promised it wouldn't ruin our friendship. We even laughed a little by the end. I remember asking him to tell his dad about what we talked about, since his dad apparently knew he liked me, and I didn't want there to be any misunderstandings. At the time, it felt like closure. I honestly thought we'd handled it maturely. After that, I tried to keep things as normal as possible. I made it clear that communication mattered to me. Friends should be able to rely on each other, talk openly, and fix problems when they come up. He agreed. So a few days later, I brought up something that had been bothering me for a while, the way he never defended me when that one guy treated me like garbage. I told him I didn't want to control who he spent time with, but I did want to feel like my friend would have my back, at least when someone told me to shut up for no reason. A month or two passed, and just when things started to feel calm again, Carpenter began acting off. Not in a loud or dramatic way, just quieter, distracted, like something was gnawing at him. I didn't press him about it right away. I figured maybe he was going through something personal, and I didn't want to pry. One afternoon, we were catching the bus together, and out of nowhere, he turned to me and asked if I remembered how I'd said we should always talk things out when something's wrong. I nodded. Of course I remembered. It was something I truly believed in. He hesitated for a second, then said he had an issue he wanted to bring up, but not right now. I told him something like, "Sure, whenever you're ready. But just so, you know, I might bring it up every once in a while because I don't want to be doing something that's hurting you without realizing it." At the time, I thought maybe I'd been too blunt about something, or accidentally said something that upset him. Still, I wanted to respect his boundaries, so I let it go. A week went by. I texted him, checking in gently, "Hey, just wanted to ask if you're ready to talk about that thing you mentioned on the bus. If not, no worries." He replied saying he was getting there, but not quite ready yet. So I backed off again. Then another week passed. By that point, the silence had started eating at me. I kept replaying everything I'd said recently, wondering what I could have done wrong. I hated the idea that I might be unknowingly hurting him. So finally, I put my foot down a little. I texted, if we don't talk about this, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong, I can't fix it. Please just tell me how I can make it right. He told me he wanted to tell me, but he was too scared. That led to a 3-hour back and forth, me reassuring him over and over. You can tell me anything. I'm ready to listen. Even if it's harsh or you think it'll hurt me, I'd rather know. I was trying to make it as safe as possible for him, to just say whatever it was. Finally, he texted, I suppose I should tell you. If I don't soon, I never will. My heart was pounding. I told him, yes, you should. Then, instead of an explanation, he sent me a song. It was one of those poetic, aching songs about waiting for someone who will never love you back. He said he'd cried over it, gotten angry about it, hated himself because of it, and then gotten angry all over again. My stomach dropped. He told me he shouldn't tell me what it was about because of the agreement we made, but that he also should, because he could see how much the not knowing was worrying me. I was completely lost at that point. I texted back, what agreement? What's stopping you? He said, oh, this ends so badly. I can only see it ending badly. That's when I started to suspect what this was really about. My fingers hovered over the screen before I finally typed, is this a romantic thing? He replied, no, but in that sarcastic, drawn-out way that meant yes. I felt my chest tighten. I told him I wasn't going to assume anything until he said it himself. It has to be you. Not me guessing, not a song, you. He hesitated. He asked me again and again if I was sure I wanted to hear it. I told him yes. I needed to hear it from him directly, even if I already knew what was coming. And then he did. He told me he loved me. Not liked, not had a crush. He said he had loved me since we first met, that he loved me when I asked him about it the first time, loved me after we agreed to stay friends, and that he still couldn't stop loving me. He called himself a burden for feeling that way. Said I probably hated him now, that I wouldn't want to be his friend anymore. I remembered just staring at my screen, my heart sinking. I wasn't angry, just sad. Sad because I'd been so careful, so clear, and somehow he still ended up here. So, I corrected him. First of all, I told him, you should never be ashamed of your feelings. That was one of the first things I said to you. I don't hate you and I do love you, but not romantically. I see you as one of my closest friends, someone I can trust. Then I asked him why he felt so much hate toward himself for something so human. He replied, I hate that I love you because I'm afraid it's not reciprocated or that it won't go anywhere. You talk about being happily single, about the right guy coming along, about being complete in yourself. You haven't done anything wrong, it's just nothing has happened. That line, nothing has happened, stuck with me. I told him, I told you nothing would happen. You don't listen because you don't want to hear what I'm saying. My answer hasn't changed, and it won't. He said he wanted to listen but didn't know how. I told him I couldn't teach him that. Acceptance isn't something someone else can give you. I could help where I was able, but I couldn't fix what wasn't mine to fix. Then I said something that might sound harsh, but I needed to be honest. I told him exactly why I didn't like him that way. That he had a tendency to be cowardly, that he avoided confrontation even when I needed someone to stand up for me. That I needed someone who could ground me when I spiraled or challenge me when I fell into bad habits, and that he struggled with both. I made sure to tell him that didn't make him a bad person. It just made him not right for me. He said he could try to be that person, that he could change if it meant I might feel differently one day. But I stopped him. I told him it didn't matter, because that wouldn't be him. It would just be a version of himself built around what he thought I wanted, and I would never want that. Still, I told him I was proud of him. It took courage to tell me all of this. That courage, even if it came too late, meant something. It showed that he could grow, that he was capable of facing hard truths. So, ladies and gentlemen, the actual drama starts now. Towards the end of our conversation, out of nowhere, Carpenter started accusing me of saying, I love you. I was honestly stunned. I never say that phrase lightly, not unless I truly mean it. So I asked him when I supposedly said it, and he said, through subtext. Apparently, he meant the way I stood close to him when we hung out, or how I'd sit next to him on the couch. He even brought up that one night during a sleepover when I'd fallen asleep on his shoulder, something I didn't even realize until I saw the photo our friends took the next morning. I immediately apologized when I saw it, but now he was using it as proof that I'd been sending mixed signals. He said I was too comfortable around him, more than I was with others. I told him, yes, because I trusted him. Because he was one of the few people I felt safe around. I explained that I never meant any of it romantically, and that this was just how I treated close friends. My girl best friend and I are just as close, and it's never been anything but platonic. I told him I honestly didn't understand how he could interpret it that way after I'd been so clear about not wanting romance. He said he had just noticed things, little moments that made him think, maybe. And then he sent me a notes up link. It was a list, paragraphs of everything he loved about me, all the things he had noticed and held on to. But partway through, the tone shifted. He went off on a tangent about something completely unrelated, then muttered to himself, "I'll leave it in anyway for word count." That line hit me like a cold slap. Word count? Who worries about that in an emotional confession? It felt like the whole thing was rehearsed, curated, like he was performing his heartbreak instead of just feeling it. And then at the very end, there was something else. A message he'd typed out from his father. It said that I was leading Carpenter on, that his father would like me a lot better if I just left him alone. That once I graduated, I'd leave Carpenter for someone more exotic. He had shown me that message before, and even then, it broke my heart. His father had the completely wrong impression of me, that I was some manipulative girl stringing his son along. I would never do that. I cared about Carpenter deeply, but as a friend. He never told his father the truth about what we'd talked about how I had been honest from the very beginning. This is where the conversation finally broke. In the middle of everything, Carpenter suddenly said that I sounded like his father. I pushed back immediately. I told him that his father didn't actually know me. He only ever saw me through Carpenter's eyes. I said he wasn't to blame for his opinion, because he'd only heard one side of the story. Then Carpenter replied, "He knew you. He figured you out a lot quicker than I did. He's got experience." That's when I snapped. Because here's the thing, his father has a history of toxic, unhealthy relationships, ones that ended with threats, screaming matches, and even talk of suicide. Carpenter has told me himself how his dad's love life has left scars. So to hear him say that his father figured me out because of that experience was insane. It was cruel, unfair, and completely untrue. It stung in a way I can't even describe. I told him as much. I told him it wasn't true, that it wasn't fair, that I didn't deserve to be lumped in with that mess. He tried to soften it by saying, "Not in a bad way," which only confused me more. How could that not be bad? I repeated what I'd already said, that his father only ever knew what Carpenter told him, and Carpenter never once corrected that version of me. His father was just trying to protect him from the person he thought I was. How could that possibly be the full picture? How could that be fair? Carpenter finally admitted it wasn't. After that, things just unraveled. He said more things that hurt, like how he was only friends with me because he loved me. That one hit hard. It made so many memories feel fake, like our friendship had been built on a condition I didn't know existed. I tried to tell myself it wasn't black and white, that emotions are messy, but it still felt like a betrayal. Then he said, "You know, I did listen to your boundaries. Better than most. I just didn't wrap my head around the whole no romance thing." Which what? That was the main boundary. How can someone not wrap their head around the one thing you said over and over? He kept circling back, accusing me of leading him on, and I hit my limit. I told him that next time if someone says something, he needs to take their words at face value, unless they explicitly say otherwise. I told him to enjoy the rest of his day, and wished him a good night. I turned off my phone right after. Later, I saw he'd sent one last message, something about how we could spend all day apologizing and that he was going to miss me. That was the last time we spoke. Before we stopped talking, he'd said he needed a break, that being around me made it harder to move on. I told him I respected that, and that I wouldn't reach out unless he did first. I meant it. That was back in April. We haven't spoken since. I honestly thought that was the end of it. But now, months later, something's come up. A mutual friend reached out to tell me she's having a birthday party, and that Carpenter will be there. She asked if that was okay with me, and of course, I said yes. It's her party. It wouldn't be fair to make her choose between us. I even told her she should probably let Carpenter know I'd be there too, so he could decide for himself. She texted me later to say he was fine with it. And now I'm stuck. I still have some of his stuff at my place and I plan to give it back, but I don't know how to handle seeing him. It's been months, and while I don't hate him, I'm still not satisfied with how things ended. There's still this weird ache, this lack of closure. I don't want to make things awkward or bring drama into my friend's birthday, The night should be about her, not us. So here I am, genuinely unsure what to do. How do I handle this encounter? Should I go up to him calmly, hand him his stuff, and leave it at that? Should I pretend everything's fine and not say anything?